Okay, I'm just going to do a quick upload, just a quick summary of the last video I did on atheism. And this is called The Fatal Flaw of Atheism in a Nutshell. So this sums up the entirety of my argument as to why atheism is not a relevant nor rational, not only intellectual position, but to proclaim oneself an atheist is to literally say nothing at all of any value relative to the question of the existence of God. So in this sense, atheism is more than ironic. It's entirely useless. It's entirely anathema to anything real rational. Now, again, this is not an argument for the existence of God. It's an argument as to why atheism represents, atheism qua atheism represents nothing of any value at all relative to the question, does God or do gods exist? So here's the summary in a nutshell. The fatal flaw of atheism is that atheism, being a dis or non-belief, possesses no epistemological foundation. That is, it doesn't proceed from any description, again, by its definition, by its nature as a dis or non-belief. It does not proceed from any description of that which constitutes knowledge, nor how man acquires it. And thus it cannot describe truth. In other words, it can't discern between what is truth and what is fallacy. In this being the case, it can't describe reality. And thus it doesn't know what actually constitutes proof and evidence of that which is real, and therefore of that which exists. So, again, let me reiterate that atheism, because it is a non-belief, and atheists happily admit this. It's not a positive belief claim. It's not saying anything about anything. It's simply a declaration that we don't believe in God. The whole concept, that whole idea, is a contradiction. Because in order for you to make the non-belief claim, I disbelieve in God, you have to know why you don't believe in God. You don't, in other words, you're not an atheist for no reason. So the idea that atheism isn't a positive belief claim, no, it's not in and of itself. But it does imply a belief. Atheism is a non-belief. It's not a positive belief claim. Atheism doesn't say anything about anything. I get that. But in order to be an atheist, you have to have a reason. Nobody's an atheist just because they're an atheist. That doesn't make any sense. I'm an atheist. I disbelieve in God because I disbelieve in God. So a non-belief, so at any rate, so yeah, atheism isn't making any positive belief claim because it's a non-belief. But by asserting oneself as an atheist, you are making an implicit claim to something that you do believe, but that you're not talking about. So at any rate, the whole idea that, well, atheism is a negative belief claim, it's not really making any positive belief statements about anything. And therefore, the burden of proof is on the theist because they are making a positive belief claim. That's nonsensical. The only difference between the atheist and the theist is that the theist is making an explicit, the theist is coming to the debate, such as it is, with an explicit positive belief claim, and the atheist is coming to the debate with an implicit one. But the atheist thinks that by simply having an implicit belief and calling themselves an atheist, gets them out of having to defend the reason why they're an atheist, which is really the issue. That's the real debate. You can't have a debate between a non-belief and a belief. That's a contradiction. That's like multiplying 1 times 0. It's pointless. So at any rate, going back to what I was saying, is that atheism being a non-belief, because it's not a belief in and of itself, it's a null belief or a negative belief. It's disbelief. It doesn't possess any epistemological foundation. Now, if you want to know what epistemology is, you can go listen to some of my other videos, but the point being is that if it's a non-belief, then it possesses no epistemological foundation, and therefore it doesn't proceed from any description of that which constitutes knowledge. Again, we're talking epistemology here. And therefore, how man acquires knowledge. And without this, it can't describe truth. And therefore, it can't discern the difference between what's true and what's a fallacy. And therefore, it can't describe reality. And thus, it doesn't know what actually constitutes proof or evidence of the real, of that which is real, and therefore of that which actually exists. So again, atheism possessing no epistemological foundation, is intellectually passive, you see, and categorically so. Thus, it can't represent an intellectual position of any kind to any degree. So to come to the debate representing atheism is a meaningless, pointless, irrelevant, it's a contradiction. You can't represent a position which is entirely, by its nature, intellectually passive, and therefore possesses no epistemology, and therefore no frame of reference by which it could understand what evidence and proof of God actually looks like. So, to represent an atheist position is meaningless. It's nonsense. There's no such thing as an atheist position, because it's a negative belief, which means it possesses no epistemology and it's entirely intellectually passive. Therefore, it's not a position. It's to represent the atheist. No, atheism is a non-position. So, being an atheist, then, is of absolutely zero value relative to the question of the existence of God. By atheism, you can make no claim. The irony is, by atheism, you can make no claims about whether or not God does exist. What constitutes evidence? It's pointless. So you see, in reality, people don't argue from a position of atheism ever. This goes back to what I was saying. They argue from an implicit, though never overtly stated, because if they stated it, then they'd have to defend it. So if you substituted, I'm arguing from a position of atheism, if you substituted that with, I'm arguing from a position of scientific determinism. I believe that the universe runs and functions, runs and operates and exists as a function of the laws of nature. Well, then you'd obviously be on the hook for defending that belief. And you and the theist would go back and forth as to who has the better, more rational metaphysical description of reality. But by going into the debate as an atheist, you have no position to defend. Therefore, you can make the fundamentally intellectually dishonest, but nevertheless, somehow people don't see this. You can make the claim that the burden of proof, therefore, is on the theist. Therefore, the burden of proof is on the theist because the theist comes to the debate with an actual belief. And since you don't have anything to defend. But of course, the reason why you have nothing to defend is because you're appealing to a position that's entirely intellectually passive and has no epistemological foundation, and therefore can't say what constitutes proof or evidence or truth or reality or existence at all, and therefore it has nothing to say about the existence of God. So I hope this is making sense. But anyway, so the reality is that people don't argue from a position of atheism ever. They always, even the atheist, when they're wearing their atheist disguise, even the atheist, everybody always argues from a positive belief. in this case, the atheism versus theism debate, about the nature of reality, because that's what this debate is about. The debate between the atheist, quote unquote, and the theist is really a debate about the nature of reality. God represents the metaphysical primary. So the sum and substance of reality, its cause and how and why it exists and operates. So the theist debate is really not, this is the other lie, is that the theism versus atheism debate is you have one side that's trying to get you to believe in some invisible, magical, all-powerful man in the sky, versus somebody who versus a side which is simply going, well, you need to show me some evidence of this invisible, all-powerful man in the sky. Otherwise, I'm not on the hook for to believe that. And so this makes the atheism look really rational. It makes the theist look really silly, because this is how it's always framed. And theists don't do themselves any favors, because they don't really know the difference either. And in fact, if you examine the metaphysics of many theists, including the Christian orthodoxy, not the Orthodox Church, but Orthodox Christian denominations in the West, you could make the argument that that's exactly what they're arguing for: the existence of a magic man in the sky that just creates everything out of nothing and kind of pulls the strings, that kind of thing. But that's the thing. So you have the atheist. This debate is you have these people that believe in some magic man in the sky, who's like all powerful and pulls the strings, and they talk to him and stuff. And then you have the atheists, which are just the rational skeptics, going, you need to show me proof and evidence. But that's a lie. That's not what the atheist-theism debate is really about. It's really about who has the better metaphysical description of reality. Does God represent a rational metaphysical primary? Or does whatever implicit belief that the atheist holds but won't ever say, does that represent the more rational metaphysical description of reality? For example, the mathematical universe, the laws of nature, the laws of physics, the processes of evolution, whatever, scientific determinism. That's really the debate. At least that would be the interesting one, but that one never happens. So anyway, in reality, people don't argue from a position of atheism ever. They argue from a positive belief, and in this case about the nature of reality. And you see, atheism really is not... See, the thing is, atheism isn't really a thing. Atheism is nothing more than... So an atheist has a positive belief. So they have this implicit positive belief. Like I said, the reason why they're an atheist. They have this implicit positive belief. They're a scientific determinist. They believe that the laws of nature and the mathematical universe govern and create and are the sum and substance of reality and how and why it works. That's their implicit belief. They hide behind the atheism so they don't ever have to really defend it. But that's the implicit positive belief that informs the atheism. They're an atheist. Why? Because this is what they actually do believe. Well, what does this make atheism really? Well, this makes atheism nothing more but a perfunctory disbelief in God by some logical extension. I mean, atheism is not a thing. It's just some kind of very boring, kind of mundane, kind of perfunctory, implied disbelief in God simply as a logical function of what they do believe. So they believe in the scientific determinist view of how reality works, and that simply precludes the idea that God could have done anything or that God can exist. So atheism is really just the perfunctory sort of disbelief in God by logical extension of their belief in whatever their metaphysics are. So it's not, atheism is just, it's kind of a side note. It's just a unimportant tertiary extension of their belief. It's like, it's like if I say, I this is just an example off the top of my head, but say I believe cars only have four wheels. In other words, the only thing that you can properly define as a car is a vehicle with four wheels. Well, then the logical extension would be, I don't believe that anything with 3 wheels or less is a car. I mean, it's just sort of a perfunctory logical extension of my positive belief. But it's not, but to make that the thing, to make that the main thing, I'm not going to talk about my definition. The only cars only have 4 wheels. I'm going to solely focus on my negative belief, which is that anything with 3 wheels or less isn't a car. But I never explain what a car is. I never talk about my positive belief claim. I just talk about what I don't believe. Do you see how that doesn't work? If I never explain what I do believe, then I can't really explain to you, then what I don't believe is irrelevant, right? I hope that makes sense. But so anyway, so atheism again is just the implied disbelief as a logical sort of tertiary extension of what they do believe. So that root belief, the why you're an atheist, that positive belief about the nature of reality, that's what really matters, not your atheism. And that, I'm sorry to tell you, or happy to tell you, is as much on trial as a belief in God is. So whatever you do believe about how reality works is as much on trial as what the theist believes. Simply hiding behind atheism or focusing on your negative belief doesn't absolve you of that obligation. And if you think it does, you're just lying to yourself. So hiding behind atheism as a way to avoid articulating hiding behind atheism as a way to avoid articulating and defending your own belief is both cowardly and immoral, by virtue of its implicit dishonesty. So again, this is not arguing. I'm not saying, again, that what you do believe is wrong or that you should believe in God. I'm saying that atheism is the idea that people go around calling themselves atheists. Not only does it poison the well, it makes atheists, in some sense, really, how do I want to put this? It sort of obscures, let's just say it this way, I'll say it nicely. It obscures the real debate. It obscures the real issue. And therefore, no one ever gets anywhere. It really doesn't do the atheists any favors, because atheism is not a means by which you can say why you don't believe in God. And if all you're doing is focusing on your atheism, you might never really get to the truth of anything. You're just going to wallow in this miasma of atheism, but it doesn't get you anywhere. Like, focusing on atheism is not a means of getting to what actually is going on. In other words, it's not going to help you find the truth. And continuing to hide behind it and sort of obfuscate on the argument and poison the well, it doesn't actually do it. It may make you feel good, but you'll never get to the truth via a negative belief. And so the sooner you sort of eject atheist as somehow something by which you define yourself, can only really do you favors in the end, because you'll be forced to actually make an argument for what you do believe. And that'll get you closer to the truth. And the truth, well, as they say, shall set you free. So that's about it. And I hope that sums that up nicely. And anyway, thank you to anybody who might be listening. And I will look forward to talking at you later. Okay, take care.